Now, I mentioned around a dozen in the last 40 minutes, a hadith of the Mahdi and some of the characteristics of the Mahdi. And as I told you before, there are over 30 hadith about the Mahdi, narrated by over 30 Sahaba. Because of this, it has been a standard feature of mainstream Sunni Islam to accept the concept of the Mahdi. And there's a long list of our classical ulema, Al-Hasan al-Basri, Mujahid ibn Jabr, many of the classic ulema, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, others, they talked about the Mahdi. And there were books written by our Sunni scholars, such as Nu'aym ibn Hammad, one of the great scholars of hadith. He wrote a book called the Book of Mahdi. Ibn Kathir, the famous Mufassir, he wrote a book called the Book of Mahdi. As-Suyuti, our great scholar, also wrote a book about the hadith of the Mahdi. So, the claim that some misguided Sunnis make, oh, we Sunnis don't believe in the Mahdi, this person doesn't know Sunni history. The concept of the Mahdi comes from Sunni Islam. Other groups took it and distorted it and converted it and scrambled it and fried it and presented it different than what is found in the hadith. In these ahadith, did we ever come across any narration that says that the Mahdi will fly in the air, the Mahdi will walk on water, the Mahdi will know ilm al-ghayb, the Mahdi will control the creation, the Mahdi will snap his fingers and mount? No! The Mahdi is not supernatural. The Mahdi is not Superman flying around in the air. The Mahdi is a mortal made of flesh and blood, but his piety will unite the ummah. That's all that it is. The Mahdi is not superhuman. There are no characteristics of the Mahdi that we're scratching our heads. It's only that he's a unifying figure, a righteous man from the descendants of Hassan radiallahu anh, who will unite the Muslim ummah, and that's it. Now, the concept of the Mahdi has been misused and abused for the last 14 centuries. Not just by ISIS, not just by Juhayman in 1979. From the beginning of times, there were people who took this concept and they wanted to pretend they are the Mahdi. Some of them were politically successful, but religiously they were not. Of them is the Abbasids. The Abbasids, they thought they will enact the hadith of the Mahdi, and that's why they started their armies in Khurasan, and they took as their banners the black flag. And they had this theology of the Mahdi. But once they got into power and they realized they're not the Mahdi, khalas, they went their way and they abandoned their sectarianism and they continued politically. And many various groups from within Islam, even within Sunnism if you like, they followed this concept of the Mahdi. Of them, most famously as well, last century, there was a Sudanese Mahdi as well, who established a dynasty in the 1880s, and he fought against the British colonialists. And he established an entire political region for 30 or 40 years. And he was calling himself the Mahdi. As well, there was Ibn Tumart, in the time of Imam al-Ghazali, there was a person by the name of Ibn Tumart who established a land and a dynasty in North Africa and even in parts of Andalus. And he called himself the Mahdi as well. And he was successful politically. But then Yusuf ibn Tashfin came along. These are all long stories, and he destroyed them. But he did establish a land politically, and he said he is the Mahdi. And other groups as well. And these people claim to be Sunni, by the way. The Mahdi of Sudan claimed to be Sunni. The Mahdi of 1979 claimed to be Sunni. The Mahdi of Ibn Tumar claimed to be Sunni. They were all within Sunni Islam, and they thought that they were doing something righteous. But all of them shed blood, and all of them were murderous in trying to establish their power, and the Mahdi will not kill anyone. Allah Azza wa Jalla will defend the real Mahdi. Now, within non-Sunni Islam, the concept of Mahdi really went far left. Within non-Sunni Islam, this concept became something totally different from within Sunni Islam. And of course, the most obvious group is that of the 12er group of non-Sunnism. Let's leave it at that, the Imamiyya. And they, if you know their history, when the 11th Imam died young without having been married, so there is no progeny, there is no heir to the 11th Imam, they invented a mysterious, non-existent 12th Imam, and they said this 12th Imam is the Imam al-Ghaib, the hidden Imam, Imam and he is the Mahdi. And they took the concept from Sunnism and they tacked it on to their unknown, non-existent 12th Imam, and they said he is the Mahdi, and they then made an entire cult and an entire supernatural mystery around the Mahdi, and they said that he controls the ilm al-ghayb, controls the future, knows this and that, and they gave him all of these different types of things to understand, to give him all of the characteristics that we know are not correct. So this is the other group. This isn't the only group to consider the Mahdi as well. Other groups as well have used this concept of the Mahdi, and we'll just mention one final one of them, and that is somebody in 1850s India by the name of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad from a province called Qadian. This person, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, he began preaching a very different theology from mainstream Islam, and he kept on getting a free upgrade to himself. He started off as being, I am just a mujaddid, that's all I am. But then he wasn't happy with that, so he got a free upgrade, free VIP pass. He goes, okay, I'm the Mahdi. For a while he called himself the Mahdi. Wasn't happy with that, he gave himself another upgrade from Mahdi to become what? No, one more between. Masih. He said, I am Masih himself. I am Masih, I am Isa. I am Isa in the flesh. Then he wasn't happy with that, then he said what? I am Nabi. So he kept on going up and up and up and up, and this is, his history is well known, and many of the famous ulema of the time, in fact by unanimous consensus, all of the major ulema of his time, they refuted him, and one of the most famous of them was the great Indian alim, Sheikh Thana'ullah Al-Armatasri, Sheikh Thana'ullah, the famous Indian Sheikh al-Hadith of the time, Sheikh Thana'ullah. He made a public mula'ana with Mirza Ghulam. This is one of the most famous incidents in his lifetime. A public mula'ana. What is a public mula'ana? He said, may Allah's curse be on the liar between the two of us, so that the one who is lying dies before the one who's telling the truth. What an interesting curse. It's a public mula'ana. Sheikh Thana'ullah and Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, they made a public curse on the 15th of April 1907, by the way. This is a public curse. Each one of them cursed the other. Allah's curse be on the liar. May the death be given to the liar while the other one is alive. This was a public curse. And not even a year after the curse, this Mirza Ghulam fell sick of diarrhea and dysentery and whatnot, and he died in a very, very despicable state. It is well known, his state that he died in, and his followers continued after him. And generally speaking, I do not excommunicate groups. However, there are red lines. And I say without any sense of shame, with a sense of pride, anyone who says there is a Rasul or a Nabi after our Rasul and our Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that person cannot be a Muslim. End of story. I don't care what anybody says. This is our religion. If you say there's a God besides Allah, you're not a Muslim. And if you say there is a Nabi after our Prophet ﷺ, you are not a Muslim. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. So this group that believes in a Nabi. Now, if they don't believe he's a Nabi, that's a different issue. I'm not going to go there. But the mainstream is what? They believe he's a Nabi. He called himself a Nabi. And they say this, they say that. No, he called himself a Nabi. And there is no compromise. You can do it. We're not calling for any violence. Astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. But they cannot call themselves Muslims from our theology. We are very clear. We do not agree that they are Muslim. And if they want to open their temples of worship and they want to preach their religions in these lands, that's their business. But we have the freedom as well to say, we don't consider you to be Muslims. You can do what you want. We are not calling for any violence at all. It is the free land. You do what you want. But we will do what we want. And of what we will do, we will say, our theology tells us, you cannot be somebody who pretends to be a Nabi after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.